get started, I do want to just mention that we were intending to live stream the meeting this evening, but we've had some technical glitches that we're going to get worked out before the next meeting. So to those watching tomorrow, we'll be there live the next time. So so I'll ask, I guess, first for any items added to the agenda, councillors. Councillor Melanie.
I would like to add the fact that I'd like to make a notice to rescind a previous motion.
Okay. Could I get a sign of hands for unanimous consent to add that to the agenda? Okay, great. So rescinding the motion has been added to the agenda. Any other items to add? Okay, so could I have a motion to approve the agenda as amended? Councillor Melanie Sampson.
I move to approve the amended agenda.
Okay, could I have a seconder on that? Councillor Sean Sampson.
Yeah, I'll second that motion.
Thank you. All right, all those in favor? Those opposed? Motion carried. Thanks, everyone. Okay, so we'll start with the next item on the agenda is the review of the minutes from January 11th, 2021. Those have been circulated in advance, and we'll assume that folks have had an opportunity to review them. Are there any errors or omissions that you wanted to note related to those minutes? All right, hearing none, I'll ask for a motion to approve the minutes from January 11th. Councillor Brent Sampson.
I make a motion to approve the minutes.
Thank you. Could I have a seconder on that motion?
I'll second that.
Okay, so we've got a seconder, Deputy Warden Digdon. Any other discussion on that?
Question?
Okay, all those in favor, please raise your hand. Those opposed, motion carried. Thank you. All right, so now we're into the presentations from this evening. So our first presentation up is the Straight Richmond Palliative Care Society. Dorothy Bernard and Elaine Noseworthy are going to give us a little update, and they are joining us via Zoom. So, so I'll hand it over to you, ladies, and let's test some sound and see if that's working for us.
Do you want me to just pretend I can see them? Ah. Yeah. Okay, thanks. So we're going to give a brief update.
Okay, you should be able to see the slides now, Dorothy and Elaine, is that right?
Yes, yes. We can, thanks.
Great.
So we're going to give an update on the Straight Richmond Palliative Care Society. And on the next slide, which I can't move. Can Yvonne move?
We're just having some sound issues, Dorothy, but we can hear you now.
Okay, next slide.
Sorry, guys, the slides are not advancing for us. Yvonne's just working on it. Have patience. Have mercy, have patience.
Okay. So I briefly wanted to review what palliative care actually is, because I think most people have misperceptions about it. So it really is a philosophy of care rather than anything else. And it's actually a philosophy that should apply throughout life. So it basically is balancing your choices with the issues that you face when you're looking at what can be done for your health and your comfort. So it is something that really should be considered in all healthcare decisions, but it's more focused on looking at all aspects of your well-being. So it includes emotional, mental, physical, and spiritual. And it also more consciously includes making decisions about what your choices are. So given the options you have related to your health. So it's not meant to be a time of giving up hope. It's meant to be a time where you actually may have to change the focus of what you'd like to do with the rest of your life, but it's not a giving up situation. And it's something that people with chronic diseases face pretty well from the time of their diagnosis. It's become synonymous with really end-of-life care, but as you can see in this diagram, it begins when you're actually facing a disease that can critically affect your health or your lifespan. And it not only includes before death of the person, it also includes after death. And bereavement care is particularly important for the family and friends. But it's something that the person who is dying often has choices about what they would like to see happen at that time. And it varies with, there are levels of palliative care that people require. So some really just require compassionate, neighborly, family type care. And most would prefer to die in their own home. Some require some intervention, say for special equipment, or they may need extra medications for pain, or they may need other comfort measures. And some have really complicated needs to the end of life course. So in this area, we actually do have access to all levels of palliative care. But for particularly complicated situations, it usually requires transportation to either Antigonish or Sydney. And we actually, in our area don't have hospice care per se, but one of the things that they are trying to set up at the Straight Richmond Hospital is the 2 rooms that we hope will be specifically designated for patients who are palliative, and they're more designed, instead of a lot of hospital equipment in the room, it's more designed like a room that you would have in your own home, and it's an area that would be welcoming for family and friends. So that's basically the philosophy of palliative care. And the next slide is a statement that you'll find in the palliative care strategic plan for Nova Scotia. So in it, it states all Nova Scotians can have access to integrated, culturally competent, quality palliative care in a setting of their choice. And by no means we're nowhere near that in any place really in Nova Scotia. But what it does imply that it requires really collaboration from a hospital setting right to your own home and really into the larger community. So there is a role that we all really play in taking care of people who are dying, in the same way that a compassionate community would take care of people who are sick. There are many things that we as citizens of Richmond County can contribute to making somebody's life better. And so it says again that palliative care is an approach. It's not really a program, although there is a palliative care program within Nova Scotia. And I think some of it is they stress the approach to care because really a lot of it happens outside of the Nova Scotia health system and in people's home and supported by community members. So at the Straight Richmond, there is a team of people who look after palliative care patients. And as you can see, it involves many different disciplines. One of the strengths of the Straight Richmond Palliative Care Society is the volunteers who are mainly responsible for bereavement and follow-up care. There's very little done at the moment that's provided by the Nova Scotia Health Authority or non-authority itself. So in the next slide, just briefly reviews the history of the Palliative Care Society, which I think is quite remarkable. So it's now in its 26th year. It really was an initiative of both health professionals and community volunteers right from the beginning, which is a little bit unusual for palliative care societies here in Cape Breton or elsewhere, really. It was incorporated in 1994, and Elaine is one of the original members, and there is one other person who is an original member. I think that's pretty remarkable myself. And there's about 25 active members who meet monthly. We do have a website as well as Facebook page. They're a little outdated, and there is actually now a small committee that's looking at updating both of those sites. So on the next slide, it really goes over the founding principles. And again, they are pretty well the same principles that we still follow to this day. And they're pretty generic ones that you would find for most palliative care community organizations. So I think the other, on the next slide, is really there it is some of the accomplishments that the society has under their belt, which are pretty impressive. So they've done a lot of work supporting volunteers and health professionals to attend various palliative care conferences or educational opportunities. And one of the earlier, I guess, before my time, things that they did is they negotiated for a room in the hospital where it was specifically dedicated for, or designated, I guess is the better word, for palliative care family members. And it's really a cozy little place that you can just sit down and have a cup of tea and sit on real chairs instead of the horrible hospital chairs. And again, they've done a lot of support for bereavement follow-up. And the time of remembrance, I think some of you folks were actually at it. So that's something that, and twice, I think, a year event that they do. And they've done a lot of work supporting both staff and team building amongst the group of people who help to look after palliative care patients. And on the next slide, there's some more. So the society doesn't really fundraise per se, but they do have a Daisy Day, which is, there's a designated palliative care week nationally, and I think, I'm not sure, it might even be internationally in May. And so they have a Daisy Day. Originally they sold daisies, but that it was successful in raising money, but the daisies were disposed of. And so that didn't happen last year because of COVID-19, but hopefully will be an event that is mainly a way to educate community members about palliative care. One of the members wrote a booklet about how to deal with grief, and now we're in the process, and Elaine will talk a little bit more about furnishing 2 inpatient rooms at the Strait, which we hope will be, the rooms we're hoping to get are ones of the larger ones and more sequestered. And those are the 2 rooms that the former municipal council donated a substantial amount of money to help with furnishing them. We do loan out equipment, and we do cover some medical expenses when other sources are not able to cover them. And then we do have education sessions trying to increase people's awareness of advanced care planning, which you should have at any age, but most don't, and other education sessions about palliative care in general. And on the next slide is our present action plan. So again, we are going to update the website and Facebook. And we have a resource in Bylaw because they have a very traditional way of looking after their elders and end-of-life care traditions that are probably stronger than ours in the rest of Richmond County. So we hope to learn from them and exchange ideas. And then we are looking at one of the things that people are generally uncomfortable talking about is death and dying. And so we're trying to encourage people to be more comfortable with talking of death and dying by somewhat of a roundabout way, but actually using theater or art or death cafes, which aren't really as morbid as they sound. It's people who just gather over a cup of tea or coffee and talk about their experiences with family, friends, and others who have died, or what their questions and concerns are about when you die. It's just a different way of getting people to face the fact that death is inevitable, and that there's a lot you can do about it, and that it's easier when you have some kind of plans in place and you're able to ask the questions that you really are concerned about. And so on the last slide, Elaine will just update you briefly on the palliative care rooms. Thank you.
Hi, well, thank you, Warden and Councillors, for the opportunity to speak to you on behalf of the Great Richmond Palliative Care Society. The Society has been very grateful for what the municipality has done for us over the years. They've been very generous, and we have been able to furnish 2 rooms for palliative care. We have the furniture and the bedding, everything for 2 rooms for palliative care patients at the Great Richmond Hospital. Now, these 2 rooms, as Dorothy pointed out, they are designated beds, which not dedicated, which means that if there are no palliative patients using them and other acute care patients come in, then they will be used for that purpose also. We have been lobbying the government for a long time now to try and get to those, 2 rooms, or at least 2 rooms in the hospital dedicated for palliative care patients. And been trying to get the province to make it mandatory so that all hospitals in Nova Scotia will have at least 2 beds, palliative care beds for palliative patients. Now, if you guys have any tricks up your sleeves on how to get through to the government, we would really appreciate hearing about it. So the donations have allowed us to purchase 4 what they're called guest chairs, and they're we wanted to get them a little brighter, so we have ivory and we have a white stone color. We also purchased 2 double chairs that convert into a single sleeper. So if the family wanted to stay with the patients, they open it up at night, it makes a bed, and then it just converts back into a chair. Now, patients and families report that these chairs are very comfortable and they're very versatile. We've purchased artwork, bedding, colorful quilts and blankets for the rooms. We purchased paint for the original 2 rooms that we had. Like Dorothy said, we had 2 larger rooms. The facility manager has said, she's hoping that we will eventually get those 2 rooms back, because we had got them painted. We had purchased paint, and one business in town had donated the flooring, some new flooring, and the rooms were beautiful, and we'd really like to, hopefully we'll get those back. We've also provided some special mattresses and replaced old ones for palliative patients. They make a huge difference to help alleviate the pain and make patients a lot more comfortable. We purchased, just recently, we purchased 3 chairs to be used in the showers for patients at home. So they're able to stay at home, they're able to, get in the shower, not have to worry about falling. And we also have purchased quite a variety of different items for in the home, for patients in the home. And if we can keep people at home, is the best scenario. But if not, we are now trying to make them comfortable in the hospital. As Dorothy said, we don't fundraise. We haven't over the years. And the reason for that is we need our volunteers' time to be with the patients, to spend time with the patients who need it the most and their families. As volunteers, you are not only spending time with the patient, a lot of the time it's the family that needs you, and you are also spending time with the families. The Daisy Day is the same thing. It's an awareness day. We have pamphlets, and we are trying to make the main focus of Daisy Day to be the awareness of the program, this palliative care program. Now, we've had requests from numerous families regarding a cuddle bed. A cuddle bed is a bed that opens up pretty much into a 3/4 size bed. And this would allow for 2 people to be able to be in the bed. Also, we have children, and we have young families, sometimes young parents who are dying. The children are there. They want to get up in the bed and spend time with the parents. The parents want them around. So we have set aside some of the funding we had received and for one of those beds. So that's something that we are working at purchasing now also. Just a little story. Someone in my husband's family was dying a couple of years ago, and all she wanted was for her daughter to be able to get in the bed with her and sleep with her. And her daughter, of course, with the legs hanging over the rail or between the rail, whatever, she'd get in the bed at night with her mom. And every night, this is what she did. And when her mom died, she said, those are, the best memories that she has now of her mom is that she was able to, do this and spend that time with her and, make her comfortable. And then there was another story online actually this week about a woman from the South Shore. I don't know if anybody saw it. Her husband was dying in the hospital and he had about 2 weeks left to live. And all she wanted was to be able to cuddle to him in the bed. So the staff found an old cuddle bed there, and there's a beautiful picture of them online. And she is just cuddled right around him. And she said, to be able to actually lay there with him is all I wanted. And he died in my arms. She said, if people want that, they should be allowed to have that opportunity. And hopefully we'll be able to provide some of that with the cuddle bed. So over the years, the Straight Richmond Hospital has been very fortunate to have a fantastic palliative care team. Great medical care is wonderful and necessary for end of life, but finding ways to uplift their spirits, the patient's spirits, and their days while in hospital will also help both the patients and their families. So the Society wants to assure that palliative patients who for numerous reasons may not be able to die at home have access to the best comfort measures in a hospital setting. And our aim is to provide palliative patients and their families with as much of a home environment as possible. And if they can't remain in their homes, then let's bring a little bit of home to them in the hospital. These, when you think of it, they're the patient's last living days, and it's also the family's last memories of their loved ones. What would I want to have as a memory if I lost a loved one? Would be that they have had the best care possible. They have been, if not able to stay at home, been able to have all that they required and needed in a hospital setting. And I'm sure that is what we all want for our loved ones. Now, COVID-19 has made it extremely stressful, of course, for palliative patients and their families, but the Society continues to work virtually with the hospital the facility manager and the facility manager to assure that the patients can still receive a good end-of-life experience, even during COVID-19. So thank you for your time. I hope that Dorothy and I have been able to shed some light on the palliative care program at the Richmond Hospital. So Dorothy, are you still there?
That was very
So if anyone has questions for Dorothy or myself, I'll certainly try to answer the best that I can.
All right, so we might have time for a question or two from counselors. Thank you very much, Elaine and Dorothy. Do any of you have questions? No, it looks like you said it all. Well done.
Well, thank you very much for having us in, for sure.
Absolutely.
And letting us shed light on the program.
Absolutely. It's our pleasure. Thank you for coming.
Okay.
Thank you.
And thank you for putting up with the technical glitches at the beginning. I appreciate it.
I'm not a techie, so.
All right. Thanks a lot, ladies.
Okay.
Can you hear me? Yes. Great. Good evening, councillors. Thanks for having me. I am here on behalf of the Ayrshire Community Development Association. So the association was established in 1998 by some really wonderful community members who brought to fruition the Ayrshire Playground, which was previously located behind Gulliver's Tea Room. In June of 2020, there was some newly appointed officers and directors who joined the committee, and after a couple meetings, kind of decided that they wanted to bring together the Richmond County Recreation Park. They all had the common goal of wanting to increase the health and wellness of community members through outdoor recreation. So at these meetings, I think, we really established a round table of things that we want to bring to this community. So our goal is to have a park that aims to provide an inclusive experience for people of all ages and all abilities. Oftentimes, people with mobility issues or people on the autism spectrum have a separate experience from their peers, and this park really aims to remove that boundary altogether. So the Richmond County Recreation Park will house a 2-lane walking track, which will be specifically the size to have 2 wheelchairs or walkers side by side. An inclusive playground, which will not only be wheelchair accessible, but will encompass sensory play equipment for children on the autism spectrum. A fitness area with outdoor workout equipment. A skating rink, which can be drained in the summertime and used as a shinny rink. A splash pad. A beach volleyball court, which is currently existing. And then aside from that, which all of that will be enclosed within a fence, in a separate area, there'll be a off-leash dog park, which will have a section for larger dogs and a section for smaller dogs. So if you see on the screen, this is kind of our preliminary drawing of what we're looking to do. So the enclosed area, which is a bit in black, is the main park area, which will be completely fenced in. So you have your playground, your splash pad, skating rink. It's quite a large area, so you can fit quite a bit in there. There'll be some area for parking, and then aside from all that, because you do kind of want to have a separate location for animals and children, you'll have your dog park off to the side, and there's currently an existing skateboard park to your left. So the location, as you could kind of see where the skateboard park is just up the road from the municipality building. It's off to the left of the school, École Beauport. So it's kind of strategically located in the heart of the community. We feel it's a great area. It's a really great piece of land. It was prior it was a baseball field, so there's some drainage underneath, and the land itself is quite moldable, so you don't have to remove any big trees or make any big changes, and you have access to it currently, which is great. Location-wise, it is right next to a cobble-pour, so it's not involved with the school. It'll be a completely separate public space, but it's very convenient to have next to a school for the children. It is just up the road from St. Anne's Centre, which with the new sidewalks, which I know everyone has really enjoyed with the mild winter we've had, they can just kind of either come on up, they can take a walk on up to the park, or they can drive up. It's not far. And it's also just down the road from the Hartsville Madame Disability Association home. That I think they could benefit from that as well. So our strategy, we understand that this is a very large project. There's quite a bit of things in there. So we've divided it into multiple phases that will accomplish over multiple years, depending on the source, well, how much funding we can source within a time frame. So depending on how much we can get, if we can get it all that we need, we can do it all at once, and if not, we can do it over multiple years. So we've budgeted for $600,000. This is based on we acquired quotes from multiple suppliers for multiple aspects of the project. And we came up with that number. That also includes a lot of volunteer time that we think we'll be able to put in there as well. So we're going to do some fundraising, local fundraising, Chase the Ace, silent auction, big sales, tournaments, and donations from individuals and businesses. There are quite a few provincial and federal grants at this time for recreation and sports, and especially I know COVID really pushed that, which I think is great. So we'll definitely be dipping into there. We've got quite a setup going for that. And we have a great community of people who are so able and so skilled and have access to quite a lot of things that I think we'll have a lot of volunteers on this project as well. So our partners, what we're looking to do, we understand that there's a lot of businesses and people, like I said, on this island who can't necessarily contribute financially, which we completely understand. But as I mentioned, there are a lot of skilled individuals on this island, and people have a lot more to give than just money. They have a lot of time, and they have, well, not a lot of time, but they have time and they have abilities and access to things that some people don't. So there is the Conseil de Développement Économique de la Nouvelle-Écosse that we are working with, CDENE. And they have provided us kind of with a groundwork on how to kind of get the project going. And Erin Ryan is the female we're working with there. And she's kind of giving us a concept of what funds are out there, what grants to source, and kind of how to put our project together, which is a great start to such a large project. We've been in contact with the CSAP to kind of talk to them about how we think they could contribute. We gave them ideas like they have like a charpenterie class where they can build stuff if they wanted to build a park bench, or they wanted to build bilingual signage, or monuments with the Acadian history. So projects of such sort I think would be really beneficial for those students because they could see it being used in the community. They also have classes like entrepreneur and co-op and stuff if the students were interested in helping us bring this project to life. I think that would be really cool for them to be able to see it in the real world. So the municipality of the County of Richmond, we understand, that there isn't always a budget for these things, but we know that you guys have a great staff with, great access to certain things, so we'd love to be able to come up with a way that we could work together to see that come to life. Just like local businesses and organizations, there's some people with big equipment, which we're going to need at some point, some heavy operating systems, and I think there's some people who would be really keen to try to help us get that done at a lower cost. And as well, community members, like I mentioned, some great volunteers and some people who can help us. I know a lot of the installation of equipment, if you can take that, a lot of suppliers will let you do that on your own with a certain amount of insurance. So I know we can gather some community members to get that done as well. So the committee itself has our annual general meeting on February 16th. It's going to be a Google Meet. So anybody who wants some more information or wants to chat or has any questions is more than welcome to join. So you just email arishat@cda@gmail.com and then they'll email you the link. So that is kind of the concept of the project and my spiel on it all. And if anybody has any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you so much, Rochelle. Any questions from councillors? I have a quick one. Oh, never mind. No, it's all right. I'll let you guys have the floor. So Councillor Sean Sampson, I think, is first.
Yeah, for me, it's not as much a question, Rochelle, as a thank you to you and your group for putting this project, or, planning this project, more or less. I mean, a couple of weeks ago, we had some presentations from Engage Nova Scotia when it comes to quality of life initiatives in this area, and the Strait area in Western Cape Breton was on the radar for people that are choosing places to live first before looking for jobs. So the fact that these areas are on their radar, and the fact that recreation parks like this project would attract more people to this area and give people the initiative to come here and also stay here with their young families. I think it's great, and whatever we can do as a council, we'll gladly do it for you. Yeah. So thanks very much. Yeah.
Thank you, Sean. Okay. Councillor Melanie Sampson. Oh, we're trying. We're trying.
I wanted to say the same thing. Like, it's really wonderful to see a community group so interested in something. It's such a big project, and I think it will really benefit the community for sure. I'm curious about your phases. So you've talked about like multiple phases. You'd also talked about, that those phases would sort of roll out as funding is secured. So do you have a general plan in terms of, where would you start? Like, what would be the first part that you'd be interested in pursuing?
Yeah, okay. So the way that we kind of did it, we looked at the project from a standpoint of going outside in. So your first step is obviously to prep the land and kind of get that ready so that whatever piece you do decide to go with, it's capable. So the first thing we think is that's really needed in this community is a playground. There was one in Ayrshire, and it unfortunately just didn't work out, and the piece was quite small. So our first big pieces probably be the walking track and the playground. We think those reach the biggest, component, and I think that would, once people see that come to life, I think they would realize that, it's really going forward and the potential is really there. And then that still allows you to work in around it. The walking track, you would have to leave a space if you had to bring on big equipment just to come through, but we planned all that through with the fencing area, that there's still room. Yeah.
Any other questions? Rochelle? Councillor Sean Sampson.
Yeah, so you would pretty much work your way from the outside in. So start with the walking track, and that's great. Yeah, and also, I mean, you mentioned dog park. How many times I don't know about you, Mike, and you guys, but in this area, how many times, people saying we need a dog park in this area, right? So to have you mention a dog park is great as well. Yeah.
So my question was kind of around, you kind of talked about the phases, so or pieces at a time, working your way out and towards the inside. So have you thought about sort of like costing that up and like chunking that up into programs yet, or is that like a little bit a ways down the road yet for you? Like in terms of funding programs. So, what would that first phase cost you? How long would that take? How might you finance it, right? Like that's generally how my mind works with these types of big projects, right?
So the way that we thought about that in the beginning, we weren't sure if we wanted to apply for pieces as we went, but we decided that we want to tackle it as a project, a large project.
Right.
All of it at once and get as much out of it as we can. There's quite a bit of funding out there, which is really great. We have an entire spreadsheet full of grants and things you can go at. So we're kind of just tackling them one by one and gathering the things that we need. And unfortunately, that's the part that takes the most time, is all the quotes. And you have to get multiple suppliers, and it's a whole process. So, but the way that we really kind of thought about it is that if we're just going to keep doing it as it comes in, and because the more people you have in the ground at once, the more you can kind of do at the same time. So the only thing that we thought we're really going to hit a snag with is the splash pad because of the water. So that's kind of the one that's probably going to take the most time, and then that and the rink. But the rink you can usually flood if you really wanted to, if you bring up mass amounts of water and then deal with it that way. But the splash pad requires continuous amounts of water flowing. So that one is kind of towards the end, even though it would be something we would love to see first. It's just a bit of a trickier process.
Right.
So that's kind of how we broke it down, but we're speaking to multiple people who have done similar projects that
Right,
kind of are
that's
giving
great.
us, well, we did this,
Yeah.
or it didn't work for us. Proxbury is a great example
great
of that, right?
example.
So they're
Yeah.
really kind of, they've given us some great input on how to kind of tackle it the best way possible.
And I can't remember the name of the program, but I mean, the main part of that park was built in a single day, right? They
Yeah.
had a build
Yeah, exactly.
day, right?
Exactly.
Yeah,
So, and they
wouldn't
said
that
that
be
the majority of the construction of all the pieces was all volunteers.
Yes,
And
yeah.
River Bourgeois is doing
Mm-hmm.
something similar, and they have quite a few volunteers on board as well.
Yeah, well, that's great. So any other questions for Rochelle? I'm not seeing any, so thank you very much for coming in and sharing that information. It's really, it's a great project. Yeah, it looks fantastic. Dream big, right? Okay, so that finishes up our presentations for this evening. Next item on our agenda is notice that we're giving, and the notice is to amend bylaw number 52, which is the sewer service charge bylaw in order to amend several components which have been listed in your package. So at this point, we're just simply giving notice that the change is forthcoming and will be addressed at the next council meeting. The CEIO has several items next on the agenda to address, so. Okay, sorry. Yeah. Okay, so the CAO has several items on the next part of the agenda. So the first is George and Gail Landry regarding the property access and an update on that from our last meeting.
So as you've seen in the package, I provided an update regarding the issue related to the request for the private or the right-of-way through the Private Ways Act. Of course, it had been dealt with prior to this request, and I don't think things have changed with respect to where we stand on it. Staff feel that there should be a bylaw created to further reinforce the Private Ways Act as such acts. In this case, it's an older act, and of course it puts the onus on the county to deal with these types of requests. So as a recommendation from our legal person, he said that we should create a bylaw. That recommendation was provided by the revenue manager a number of years back. It was not pursued at that point in time, so at the time I was the revenue manager, so I would still stand by that recommendation. Whether or not you would like to proceed, it probably would be the proper way to go, and get staff to draft up a bylaw, and we can present it at bylaw and then make it happen.
Okay, so any questions from councillors for the CAO or in general? No, so it sounds like oh, sorry. Go ahead, Deputy Warden.
I just have one for the CEO. So the proposed bylaw that you're looking at having drafted, is that to give permission for a landlocked piece of property? For a right-of-way, I guess, to a landlocked piece of property?
So essentially what the bylaw would contain would be how we were going to address such requests. So I think things included in there would be how we were going to recover costs would be a major part of the bylaw. As it stands now, the Act itself provides a couple of options, and we'd need to get some certainty with respect to how we were going to collect that money. As we all know, things like that are a process, and processes take time and money and resources. So that would be probably the largest component of the bylaw, is how we were going to be able to recover the expense and sort of itemize the expenses that are included in such a request. It is a complicated thing, and it is a controversial thing, especially with respect to the location of the right-of-way and what property you're going to be issuing the right-of-way on.
Okay. Any further questions for CAO? Okay, so at this point, it sounds like we're ready to refer that perhaps to a bylaw and policy committee. And then have staff kind of bring some information back to the table based on either best practices and or information you've gathered in the past. Does that sound agreeable to everyone? Oh, sorry, Councillor.
Yeah, I was just going to say, so do we make a motion to ask staff to, create a draft bylaw to that effect, and then we can review it at bylaw and policy committee?
I don't think that's necessary. The bylaw, the motion that was created 2 years ago is basically still there, so it hasn't been changed, so we can just work off that motion and provide a draft bylaw.
Okay, that sounds great. Okay, everyone's in agreement with that. Thank you very much. So the next item on the agenda was, of course, information from Clint Sampson, Revenue Manager, regarding Mike and Kim Noseworthy, property damaged by fire. So I think the CIO has some background information to share.
So it's essentially a request from these folks who had their property completely destroyed by fire. The policy does allow for a tax adjustment on that property based on the value of the home. That information was provided from the revenue manager, Clint Sampson. He's calculated that value at $297.70, which represents the value of the home from the date of the fire to March 31st, 2021.
Okay, so at this point, and that background information was all provided in your packages, so at this point, would we need a motion to that effect, I think, to accept that recommendation? Councillor Melanie Sampson?
I move that we accept the recommendation of Revenue Manager Clint Sampson regarding the property taxes for Kim and Mike Noseworthy.
Okay. Could I have a seconder on that? Councillor Brent Sampson.
I'll second that motion.
Thank you. So any further discussion?
Question?
Okay, so all those in favor, please raise your hand. Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry, Councillor Sampson.
Yeah, no, just looking at this bylaw, CEO Marchand, is this simply for a resident or a property that was totally destroyed by fires, or does it pertain to, partially damaged where they're not living in the home for, a limited amount of time, or, I guess so. My question would be if they're out of the home for 6 months to repair the home, would that pertain to this bylaw as well, or no? It's just totally destroyed.
No, the bylaw is specific, and it indicates completely destroyed by fire.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any further discussion? All right, so all those in favor, please raise your hand. Those opposed, motion carried. Thank you very much. All right, and then the next item on the agenda was background information related to previous discussion at council regarding COVID-19 wastewater testing, and CIO Marshall.
So that was a request at the last council meeting where council instructed staff to get some information, more information on the program, and Chris did get some information, and he provided a briefing. And as he has indicated, we do not expect to receive confirmation by Monday's meeting. Well, that was yesterday, and we still haven't received confirmation. So we're waiting on that, and it appears as though there are other municipalities that have the same desire to express that same interest. And so I guess we're in a queue, and we're going to be waiting for a response from those folks.
Okay.
And when we get that response, we'll pass it on.
Thank you very much. Okay, so the next item on our agenda is correspondence with action required for the Fedora Lake SEIP regarding their annual funding request. So they have provided a letter requesting, I believe it was $5,000 in funding for the next fiscal year. The group provided some background information and, of course, has discussed being impacted by by the current situation with the pandemic as well. So, so at this point, the ask is for a $5,000 contribution for the 2021-2022 fiscal year. So I'd invite comments from councillors on that matter. If anyone has questions. Councillor Melanie Sampson.
I'm just wondering, is SEIP on our list of presenters that we're expecting to see at council?
Yes.
And if not, okay.
Yes.
And when is that timing?
Was it for next? It's
But
not until
within
April?
budget deliberation time, so,
March 8th.
okay. So, I mean, that's what I would be looking
Yeah.
for, certainly. I'd love to see a presentation from them.
Yeah.
But I mean, regardless of that, I suspect we'd be handing this off to budget, to the audit committee.
Yeah. Okay, any other questions? So I think we could defer that to the presentation and to budget deliberations, I guess, following. So I don't think we need a motion to that effect. So. Yeah, exactly. Okay, so then for information purposes, there is an additional piece of correspondence from the Municipal Affairs and Housing, the Office of the Minister, regarding the Safe Restart Agreement. And again, that information's been provided. There's, again, like I said, no action required on this, but it was to, to just describe a little bit of information, background information about Safe Restart, including the portion designated for transit, and just outlining what that funding is to be used for. So, are there any questions on that particular piece of correspondence? Yep, Councillor Melanie Sampson.
So how do we define transit? So, for example, where does our $40,806 go? What is it in our budget? Have we moved it on to straight area transit? What would we do with that money?
So, I think CIO Marchand has some background on that to provide.
So we did have a session with FCM last week, and I attended the session through Zoom, and there were a lot of questions asked and discussions on the Safe Restart, and there still is a lot of uncertainty as to how it's going to unfold, and the transit one was an issue, and there were a few questions, but we're exploring some options with respect to that 40,000, whether or not we can. We won't use it this year, obviously, because we've already committed to our transit organization, and I believe we may have even committed and paid the amount owing. So the program, Safe Restart program, provides us an opportunity to hold some of that monies in sort of a reserve, so we can defer to next year. However, we're still working on how we can use that money in coordination with our annual amounts that we provide them. As far as the rest of the money, there are some clear-cut areas where we can allocate the money. However, there is a lot of gray area, and the session that we had, a lot of people asked those questions, and the individual that was hosting the session was to get some clarification on some of the issues and some of the questions that were asked, and they will provide that to us in a sort of like a newsletter or some kind of maybe even another update and maybe even another Zoom session. I'm not aware, I'm not sure right now, but I'm sure we'll get some more information on it.
Yeah. Okay, thanks. Any further questions regarding that item?
I just want to be clear. So what you're saying is that we're just waiting to hear back from them in terms of how we're able to use this money, whether we're able to use it as our regular contribution, for example, to the straight area transit, or whether or not it would need to be over and above our regular commitment because it's intended for a Safe Restart?
I guess clarification on whether or not we can use it as part of that annual contribution. As far as like I say, as far as the majority of the expenses, they're clear cut. We have some expenses that are associated with the COVID, the increased costs in providing a service due to COVID, so we can allocate money in that respect. And whatever we use will be allocated to this current year. However, what we don't use as part of that Safe Restart money, we can carry over into 2021, 2022 in the form of a reserve.
Okay. Any further questions? Okay, so hearing none, we'll move on to the next item on our agenda, which is the review of the checks issued, and a list was provided to us as part of our council packages for January 2021. Were there any questions regarding that item? Councillor Sean Sampson?
Yeah, I don't have a question referring to the checks from January, but just wanted to make it public. I had asked the CEO a question in December about a numbered company, and just wanted to make that answer public. Thank you for your reply, CEO. You did reply to me in an email, but just wanted to make it public. That the answer was, it was for Warren Benoit's maintenance shop in Fedora. There was a total of 6 invoices for maintenance on our public works vehicles. So just want to make that public to the residents of Richmond County that the CEO did provide us with that answer. So thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Sampson. Any other questions regarding the checks? Review of checks? Okay, so hearing none, that brings us to the next item in the agenda, which is items added. And Councillor Melanie Sampson, you added an agenda item to rescind a motion.
So actually, the agenda item was to make notice that I intend to request or to rescind a motion. So I'm not sure how much details I need to give, and perhaps I'll look to CAO Marchand to help me with that. So I would say the basics here are that I'm looking to serve notice of my intent to rescind the motion at our next regular council meeting, and that the original motion was made on January 25th at our regular council meeting. Should I provide more detail?
Which motion?
What regard with the motion, the specific motion, I think may be appropriate.
So the motion being that it was moved by Deputy Warden Digdon, seconded by Councillor Brent Sampson, that council accept the recommendation of the Eastern District Planning Commission, and that a 10-day demolition order be issued on the property of Lester Morgan and Elizabeth Morgan at 2011 Whiteside Road, Whiteside, Richmond County, PID 750-26898 and AAN 033045882. Motion carried. That's
Correct.
The motion in question.
Correct. So given the new information that we were provided earlier this week, I'm making notice that I plan to put a motion forward to rescind that original motion when we meet again at our regular council meeting later this month.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Councillor Melanie Sampson. Any questions on that item, Deputy Warden?
Yeah, I just have one basic one. I hope we don't put the cart in front of the horse. So I guess the question would be, if we wait them 2 weeks, is it going to be too late for the motion that you're looking to?
CAO Marchand, would you like to provide some clarity there?
I would, in light of this information and the fact that the notice is given, I will inform EDPC tomorrow and indicate to them that there has been a notice been made to rescind the motion, and we'll take the necessary steps to halt any activity on that property.
Okay, thank you very much. Any other questions? Okay, so hearing none, that brings us to the next item on our agenda, which is question period. So I'll invite questions from the gallery. It's a little bit of an empty house this evening, but and a quiet group. So so no questions. So I'll entertain a motion to move us in camera. Okay. Could I have a motion to move us in camera, please? Councillor Sean Sampson.
Yeah, I'll make a motion to move us in camera.
Thank you. Councillor Melanie Sampson.
I will second that motion.
Thank you so much. All those in favor? Those opposed? Motion carried.